Zixilorp sighed, his tentacles drooping with exasperation as he stared at the holographic display. "You've got to be kidding me," he muttered, his voice a mixture of disbelief and poorly concealed amusement. "Professor Gluckner, are you sure this isn't some sort of intergalactic prank?" The elderly Borgin professor, whose wrinkled green skin seemed to sag even more under the weight of his student skepticism, cleared his throat, or whatever passed for a throat in Borgin anatomy. "I assure you, young Zixilorp, this is no joke. Earth is, indeed, classified as a Class 12 Deathworld." A ripple of laughter mixed with concerned murmurs spread through the classroom. The gathered alien students, representing species from across the galaxy, exchanged glances that ranged from amused to horrified. "But Professor," chirped Twyla, a bird-like creature with iridescent feathers, "how can any sentient species survive on such a planet, let alone become a spacefaring civilization? It defies all logic." She punctuated her statement with a dramatic ruffle of her plumage. Professor Gluckner's lips, if you could call them that, curled into what might have been a smile. "Ah, Twyla, that is precisely why we're here today. To understand the enigma that is humanity in their homeworld, Earth." He waved one of his appendages and the holographic display zoomed in on the blue and green planet. "Now, who can tell me why Earth is considered so dangerous?" A tentative appendage rose from the back of the room. It belonged to Blurp, a gelatinous blob who spoke in bubbling tones. "Is it because of their extreme temperature variations? I heard they experience both freezing and boiling temperatures in the same year." "Excellent observation, Blurp," Professor Gluckner exclaimed, his voice a mixture of enthusiasm and what sounded suspiciously like a suppressed chuckle. "Indeed, Earth's temperature range is quite impressive. From scorching deserts to frozen tundras, humans have adapted to survive in conditions that would liquefy some of us and solidify others." Zixilorp couldn't help but interject, his tentacles waving frantically. "But Professor, that's nothing compared to the gravity. 9.8 meters per second squared. It's a wonder they haven't been crushed into paste." The classroom erupted into a cacophony of gasps, giggles, and what sounded like someone choking on their own respiratory fluids. "Quite right, Zixilorp," the professor continued, his tone a blend of academic seriousness and barely contained mirth. "The gravity on Earth is indeed formidable. To put it in perspective, imagine carrying around a Borgin infant all day, every day." The mental image of the students lugging around baby Borgins known across the galaxy for their density tendency to drool acid sent another wave of laughter through the room. "But wait," squeaked Minuscule, a tiny silicon-based lifeform, her voice barely audible over the general commotion. "I read that they have enormous bodies of dihydrogen monoxide covering most of their planet. Isn't that highly dangerous?" Professor Gluckner's eyes twinkled, or perhaps that was just light reflecting off his corneas. "Ah yes, the infamous water. Not only does it cover most of their planet, but it also falls from the sky regularly." A collective gasp echoed through the classroom. The idea of a corrosive substance routinely raining down seemed too horrific to comprehend. And yet the professor continued, his voice taking on a tone of wonder. "Humans not only survive these rainstorms, but some even find them pleasant. They frolic in this falling dihydrogen monoxide, singing and dancing." Twyla's beak fell open in shock. "They expose themselves to it voluntarily? Are they insane?" "Oh, it gets better," Professor Gluckner chuckled, his amusement now clearly evident. "They willingly immerse themselves in large bodies of this substance. They call it swimming and consider it a leisure activity." The classroom exploded into a mixture of horrified exclamations and hysterical laughter. Several students looked like they might lose their lunch, while others seemed torn between fascination and disgust. "But surely," Zixilorp interjected, his tentacles now tied in knots from stress, "surely their planet must be tectonically stable, right? I mean, no species could evolve intelligence while constantly dodging volcanic eruptions and earthquakes." The professor's expression could only be described as gleeful. "Oh, my dear Zixilorp, you give the humans far too much credit. Their planet is a geological nightmare. Tectonic plates constantly shifting, volcanoes erupting, earthquakes shaking their dwellings to pieces. And do you know what they do?" The class leaned forward in anticipation, a mix of dread and excitement on their alien faces. "They build their cities right on top of fault lines and at the feet of active volcanoes." The revelation was met with a chorus of disbelieving groans and hysterical giggles. One student in the back seemed to have fainted, their elongated bodies slumped over their desk. "But wait," Professor Gluckner held up a limb for silence, his voice dropping to a dramatic whisper. "We haven't even touched on the most dangerous aspect of Earth yet." The classroom fell silent, all eyes and other sensory organs fixed on the professor. "The biomass," he said, his voice a mix of awe and terror. "Earth's biodiversity is off the charts, and every single organism seems hellbent on killing everything else." Holograms flickered to life around the room, showcasing Earth's myriad of lethal flora and fauna. Students recoiled as images of great white sharks, box jellyfish, and saltwater crocodiles flashed before them. Sweet mother of sarblacks. Twyla squawked, her feathers standing on end. How do humans survive with such monstrosities lurking in their waters? Oh, that's nothing, the professor waved dismissively, a mischievous glint in his eyes. Wait until you see what lurks on land. The hologram shifted, now displaying images of lions, tigers, bears, and venomous snakes. With each new creature, the students' reactions grew more animated, a symphony of gasps, shrieks, and nervous laughter filling the air. And here's the kicker, Professor Gluckner continued, barely containing his glee. Humans don't just survive alongside these creatures. They study them, they admire them, and in some cases, they even keep them as pets. This revelation was too much for poor Blurp, who lost control of his gelatinous form and melted into a puddle on the floor. Now, Blurp, the professor chided gently, pull yourself together. We haven't even gotten to the plants yet. As if on cue, the holograms shifted again, this time showcasing Earth's diverse and often deadly plant life. Images of poison ivy, manchineel trees, and the infamous Jimpy plant flashed before the class. You mean to tell me, Zexalorp sputtered, his tentacles flailing wildly, that even their foliage is trying to kill them? Indeed. Professor Glockner confirmed with what could only be described as sadistic glee, and some humans make a hobby out of identifying and cataloging these deadly plants. They call it botany. The classroom erupted into chaos once more, a cacophony of disbelief, laughter, and what sounded suspiciously like someone trying to book the next flight to the furthest corner of the galaxy. But Professor Minuscule's tiny voice somehow cut through the din. Surely humans themselves can't be that dangerous, right? I mean, they're made of such soft, squishy material. The professor's expression shifted to one of mock seriousness. Ah, Minuscule, that's where you're gravely mistaken. Humans might just be the most dangerous species on their already lethal planet. The holograms changed again, this time showcasing human history. Images of wars, extreme sports, and daredevil stunts flashed by in rapid succession. You see, Professor Gluckner explained, his voice a mixture of admiration and disbelief. Humans have this fascinating quality. They're not content with merely surviving their death world. Oh no, they actively seek out new ways to challenge it. The class watched in stunned silence as holograms displayed humans climbing sheer cliff faces, diving into underwater caves, and leaping out of perfectly good aircraft. They call these activities sports and hobbies, the professor continued, shaking his head in bewilderment. Can you believe it? They voluntarily put themselves in harm's way for fun. Twyla's beak clacked open and shut several times before she finally found her voice. But why? What could possibly drive them to such madness? Professor Gluckner's expression softened, a note of genuine admiration creeping into his voice. Curiosity, Twyla. An insatiable drive to explore, to push boundaries, to see what lies beyond the next horizon. It's what allowed them to not just survive on their death world, but to thrive and eventually reach for the stars. A thoughtful silence fell over the classroom as the students pondered this. Even Blurp had managed to reconstitute himself, albeit in a slightly lopsided shape. Now the professor continued, his tone becoming more serious. Let's discuss how this environment has shaped human physiology and psychology. First and foremost, humans are incredibly resilient. Their bodies can withstand tremendous physical stress and recover from injuries that would be fatal to most species. The hologram shifted to display a human skeleton. Their bones are composed of a calcium-based structure that's both light and incredibly strong. It allows them to support their mass in Earth's high gravity while still remaining agile. Zexalorp raised a tentacle. But Professor, I've heard rumors that humans can actually become stronger if you break their bones. Is that true? The professor chuckled. In a manner of speaking, yes. Human bones, when broken and properly healed, often become stronger at the point of the break. It's a remarkable adaptation that turns injury into improvement. A collective murmur of amazement rippled through the class. Moreover, the professor continued, human skin is a marvel of biological engineering. It's waterproof, yet breathable. It can repair itself and even adapt to different levels of solar radiation by changing color. Twyla ruffled her feathers in disbelief. You mean they can change their coloration at will? Not exactly at will, Professor Gluckner clarified. But their skin does darken when exposed to their sun's radiation as a protective measure. They call it tanning, and some even do it deliberately. The class broke into another round of incredulous laughter and exclamations. But perhaps most impressive, the professor went on, his voice taken on a tone of genuine, is the human brain. Despite being soft and surprisingly small, it's capable of incredible feats of cognition, problem-solving, and creativity. The hologram shifted to display a human brain, with various areas lighting up as the professor spoke. Their neuroplasticity is off the charts. Humans can learn, adapt and overcome challenges at a rate that's almost unheard of in the galaxy. They've developed countless technologies to overcome their physical limitations and reshape their environment to suit their needs. Zixilorp's tentacles writhed in a gesture of confusion. But Professor, if they're so adaptable, why haven't they modified themselves to better suit their death world? Surely genetic engineering would be easier than terraforming an entire planet. The professor's expression turned thoughtful. Zixilorp, that's a complex question. Humans have a unique relationship with genetic modification. While they've made great strides in medical applications, there's a strong cultural taboo against fundamental alterations to their genome. But why? Blurp bubbled, his gelatinous form quivering with curiosity. It's rooted in their history, philosophy, and various belief systems, Professor Gluckner explained. Many humans believe that their struggles against their environment are an integral part of their identity. They fear that by fundamentally changing themselves, they might lose what makes them well human. The class fell silent, each student lost in thought as they tried to wrap their minds around this concept. Now, the professor continued, clapping his appendages together, let's talk about human society and how it's been shaped by their death world. The hologram shifted once more, displaying scenes of human cities, from ancient civilizations to modern metropolises. Humans are social creatures, forming complex societies as a survival strategy. Their cities are marvels of engineering, designed to protect them from the elements and predators. But here's the fascinating part. Despite creating these safe havens, many humans still seek out the dangers of their world. Images flashed by of humans engaging in various outdoor activities, hiking through dense jungles, scaling snow-capped mountains, and diving in deep oceans. They call it getting back to nature, Professor Gluckner explained, his tone a mixture of amusement and admiration. Can you believe it? They build these incredible shelters only to voluntarily leave them for the dangers of the wild. Twila's feathers ruffled in confusion. But why? Why would they expose themselves to such risks unnecessarily? The professor's eyes twinkled. Excellent question, Twila. It's part of what makes humans so fascinating. They have this innate drive to challenge themselves, to push their limits. They believe that facing and overcoming dangers makes them stronger, both physically and mentally. Zixilorp's tentacles twisted into a knot. That's insane. Utterly illogical. Perhaps, Professor Gluckner conceded with a nod, but it's also what's driven their rapid advancement as a species. This willingness to take risks, to venture into the unknown, has led to some of their greatest discoveries and innovations. The hologram shifted again, this time showing a montage of human achievements: the first flight, moon landings, deep-sea exploration, and more. You see, the professor continued, his voice filled with enthusiasm. Humans have taken the challenges presented by their death world and turned them into opportunities. Every obstacle becomes a puzzle to solve, every danger a challenge to overcome. Minuscule's tiny voice piped up. But Professor, surely all this risk-taking results in a high mortality rate. How do they maintain their population? A mischievous grin spread across Professor Gluckner's face. Well, that brings us to another fascinating aspect of human biology. You see, humans are incredibly productive when it comes to reproduction. The classroom erupted into a mixture of giggles, gasps, and what sounded suspiciously like someone choking on their own respiratory fluids. Now, the professor chided, trying and failing to keep a straight face. Let's keep things professional. The point is, humans have evolved to reproduce quickly, and often, likely as an adaptation to their high-risk environment. Zixilorp's tentacles waved frantically. But Professor, doesn't that lead to overpopulation? How do they manage their resources? Another excellent question. Professor Gluckner beamed. Resource management is indeed a significant challenge for humans. They've developed complex economic and political systems to address these issues, with varying degrees of success. The hologram displayed scenes of human agriculture, industry, and commerce. Humans have become incredibly efficient at extracting resources from their environment, the professor explained. They've developed technologies to cultivate food in harsh conditions, extract energy from deep within their planet, and even harness the power of their sun. Blurp bubbled thoughtfully. It sounds like they're quite adept at exploiting their environment, but doesn't that cause problems? The professor's expression turned serious. Indeed it does, Blurp. Humans' relationship with their planet is complicated. Their rapid technological advancement has often come at a cost to their environment. It's a challenge they're still grappling with. The hologram shifted to show images of pollution, deforestation, and climate change. In their quest to tame their death world, humans have inadvertently created new dangers for themselves. Professor Gluckner continued, his voice tinged with a mixture of concern and admiration. Climate change, pollution, resource depletion. These are challenges that threaten not just humans, but their entire planet's ecosystem. The class fell silent, the gravity of the situation sinking in. Even Zexalorp's tentacles were still for once, but the professor added, a note of hope in his voice. This is where human ingenuity truly shines. They're not content to simply create problems, they're constantly working on solutions. The hologram shifted again, displaying images of renewable energy sources, reforestation projects, and advanced recycling technologies. You see, Professor Glockner explained, his enthusiasm building. Humans have this remarkable ability to rally together in the face of global threats. When they put their minds to it, they can achieve incredible feats of innovation and cooperation. Twila's feathers ruffled with curiosity. But Professor, if they can cooperate to solve global issues, why don't they just stop fighting each other? I've heard stories about human conflicts and they sound terrifying. The professor's expression turned wry. Ah, Twila, you've touched on one of the great paradoxes of humanity. Their capacity for both cooperation and conflict is, well, it's frankly baffling to most other species. The hologram flickered, showing scenes of both warfare and peace negotiations. Humans have a long history of conflict, Professor Gluckner admitted, his tone somber. They've fought wars over resources, territory, IDGs, sometimes for reasons that seem trivial to outside observers. But here's the fascinating part. These same conflicts have often driven some of their greatest advancements. Zexalorp's tentacles wiggled in confusion. How can conflict lead to advancement? That doesn't make any sense. Oh, but it does. In a uniquely human way, the professor chuckled. You see, warfare has driven incredible leaps in technology. Everything from metallurgy to aviation to computer science has been accelerated by military research. The hologram displayed a timeline of human technological advancements, many of them originating from wartime innovations. But it's not just technology, Professor Gluckner continued. Conflict has also shaped human social and political structures. Many of their most cherished ideals, democracy, human rights, international cooperation, emerged as responses to the horrors of war. Blurp bubbled thoughtfully. So they fight in order to learn how not to fight. The professor's eyes twinkled. In a manner of speaking, yes. It's a painful, often tragic process, but it's undeniably led to progress. And here's the truly remarkable thing. Despite their history of conflict, humans have managed to create global systems of cooperation that would have been unthinkable just a few centuries ago. The hologram shifted to show the United Nations headquarters, international scientific collaborations, and global humanitarian efforts. Humans have this extraordinary ability to put aside their differences when faced with a common threat or goal, Professor Gluckner explained. Whether it's a global pandemic, a natural disaster, or the challenge of space exploration, they've shown time and again that they can work together on a planetary scale. Minuscule's tiny voice piped up. But Professor, if they can do all that, why haven't they solved all their problems? Why is Earth still considered a death world? The professor's expression turned thoughtful. Ah, minuscule, that's the million-credit question, isn't it? The truth is, humans are complicated. They're capable of incredible altruism and horrific cruelty, often in the same breath. They can be short-sighted and visionary, selfish and selfless, destructive and nurturing. He paused, letting his words sink in before continuing. But perhaps exactly why they've thrived on their death world. Their contradictions, their internal conflicts drive them to constantly question, to seek improvement, to strive for something better. The hologram flickered once more, this time showing a montage of human achievements, art masterpieces, scientific breakthroughs, feats of engineering, and acts of heroism. You see, Professor Gluckner said, his voice filled with wonder, humans don't just survive on their death world. They create beauty in the midst of danger. They find meaning in their struggles. They dream of a better future and work tirelessly to make it a reality. The class was silent, each student lost in thought as they contemplated the professor's words. And that, my dear students, Professor Gluckner concluded, his voice soft but intense, is why Earth is not just a death world. It's a crucible, forging a species that may well shape the future of our entire galaxy. As if on cue, the classroom lights brightened, signaling the end of the lecture. The students blinked, coming out of their reverie. Now then, the professor said, his tone shifting back to his usual jovial manner. For your next assignment, I want each of you to choose one aspect of human culture or technology and analyze how it's been shaped by Earth's death world status. And no, Zixilor, you can't just write humans are crazy and be done with it. A ripple of laughter spread through the classroom, breaking the tension. As the students began to gather their things, chattering excitedly about the lecture, Professor Glockner noticed a small group lingering near his desk. Yes, he inquired, raising an eyebrow, or what passed for an eyebrow in Borgan physiology. Twila stepped forward, her feathers quivering with excitement. Professor, we were wondering, is it true that the Galactic Council is considering opening diplomatic relations with Earth? The professor's eyes widened in surprise. Now where did you hear that? Blurp burbled nervously. It's just a rumor going around the campus. They say humans might be invited to join the Galactic Federation soon. Professor Gluckner stroked his chin thoughtfully. Well, I couldn't possibly comment on galactic politics, but he added with a mischievous twinkle in his eye, if it were true, I'd say the Federation better brace itself. Humans have a way of shaking things up. As the students filed out, still buzzing with excitement, Professor Gluckner turned to stare out the window at the stars twinkling in the alien sky. He chuckled softly to himself. Humans joining the Galactic Federation, he mused. Now that would be an adventure for the ages. I almost feel sorry for the rest of the galaxy, almost. With a final chuckle, he gathered his materials and headed out, already planning his next lecture. After all, there was still so much to teach about the fascinating, terrifying, awe-inspiring Deathworld called Earth and its even more remarkable inhabitants. As he walked down the corridor, he couldn't help but grin. He had a feeling that the galaxy was about to get a whole lot more interesting. And if there was one thing he'd learned from studying humans, it was this: when things get interesting, that's when the real fun begins.